So our next scripture comes from Genesis chapter 25, verses 19 through 34. This is the story of Isaac, son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he took his wife Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Paddan Aram, sister of Laban the Aramean. Isaac pleaded with the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren. And the Lord responded to his plea, and his wife Rebekah conceived. But the children struggled in her womb, and she said, "If so, why do I exist?" She went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord answered her, "Two nations are in your womb. Two separate people shall issue from your body. One people shall be mightier than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." When her time to give birth was at hand, there were twins in her womb. The first one emerged red, like a hairy mantle all over, so they named him Esau. Then his brother emerged, holding on to the heel of Esau, so they named him Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when they were born. When the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the outdoors, but Jacob was a mild man who stayed in camp. Isaac favored Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah favored Jacob. Once when Jacob was cooking a stew, Esau came in from the open famished. And Esau said to Jacob, "Give me some of that red stuff to gulp down, for I am famished," which is why he was named Edom. Jacob said, "First, sell me your birthright." And Esau said, "I'm at the point of death. What use is my birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." He swore to him, sold his birthright to Jacob. Jacob then gave Esau bread and lentil stew. He ate and drank, and he rose and went away. Thus did Esau spurn his birthright. The grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of the Lord lives forever. This is the word of the Lord. All thanks be to God. The struggle for first place. We've heard a lot about struggle in recent weeks. Hagar and Ishmael, Abraham, the almost sacrifice of Isaac, Isaac meeting Rebekah. Nothing comes easy. In story after story, we find struggle. Even the romantic one with Isaac and Rebekah involved riding a camel from Israel to Mesopotamia with no real plan other than complete trust in the Lord. That this perfect woman was going to show up at the perfect time and perfect way at the perfect place. Everything had to be perfect or the whole thing was going to fail. And on top of that, it was against the backdrop of Sarah dying. Then Rebekah appeared by the will of the Lord, and through her trust in the Lord, in the same way that the servant had, through her trust, she became Isaac's wife, Isaac's comfort and consolation in the loss of his mother. And that's what leads us here to Esau and Jacob's birth. This struggle, this whole theme of struggle, over and over again. Struggle didn't begin with Rebekah's painful pregnancy. It didn't begin with her being barren. The struggle is in this family's blood. Now, my brother Justin has kind of a joke about us, how we go through our struggles. And I say kind of a joke because it comes from a very serious and very real place, but lighthearted and having fun with it. It comes from real struggle. It comes from real pain. You know, like when you're whining and you're complaining about something that on the bigger scale really isn't that important, but it just seems like such a big deal to you in the moment. You know, it's just, whatever it could be, you know, first world problems typically. I'm tired. I don't want to. I don't feel like it. You know, just every excuse in the book and every story in the book and, you know, acting like You're not feeling great is the biggest problem in the world. Now, what Justin says in response to that, sarcastically, life is pain. Bear in mind, Justin has been near death, fighting an illness that's related to cancer, and it gets treated like cancer. So he's been near death from the illness. He's been near death from the treatments. Praise God, he's doing well, and he's still getting the treatments and still fighting it. And he's also working on some really impressive stuff, engineering on private jets in the middle of it all. He's been through battles for his life, as some of you have. As some of you here in the congregation have, as many of you has had at home, online. And Justin continues to battle, and he's thankful for every day he's got. And it just doesn't make any sense to complain anymore about the stuff that's really not that big a deal. That's perspective. He's gained real perspective from what he's gone through. And maybe that could speak to how truly painful Rebekah's pregnancy was and what she really was going through. After going so long with that not being able to have children, so it looks like about 20 years, because they were 40 when they got married. Isaac was 60 when she was able to have. So 20 years not being able to have children, carrying that weight on her shoulders and the stigma of the time. And then the pregnancy itself felt like she was dying. It was so awful, she asked God, if so, then why do I even exist? What's the point of going through all this pain? And then at the end of it, me and my babies are just going to die anyway. After all this, how do you do about Isaac and Rebekah getting together, and now this? But God was there with her. God spoke to her. God reassured her, saying, 2 nations are in your womb. The older shall serve the younger. Why do you exist? Well, my daughter, Queen Rebekah, to be mother of nations, to be mother of Israel. On top of that, get used to the struggle. Life is pain, Yet you, my daughter, will also be blessed by the gift that is also life. Life, her blessing, came in the form of twins battling for their birthright. Esau was out in the lead. Man, this competition is serious, and it's been serious the whole time. Esau was out on the lead. Jacob was hot on his trail. So close was the race that Jacob was holding on to Esau's heel, clinging it in his hand, not letting it go, and they even came out that way. There was the struggle for the birthright. For which boy will rightfully receive it? The struggle was real. Right from the start. Justin and I never had a struggle over the birthright. He was the firstborn, and that was just fine with me. I was able to learn from some of his mistakes and stay under the radar a little bit better than he did. But neither of us were as much trouble as Jacob doing the things that he did. It was pretty messed up what he does to Esau in this story. And then the blessing thing that he does to Esau later on is even worse. It's not a coincidence that Jacob and Esau were struggling for that birthright from the very start, before they were even born. Ishmael and Isaac were struggling for that very same birthright before Ishmael was born, and before Isaac was even a sparkle in his mother's eye. In counseling, we call this family systems. It's like things repeat themselves generation after generation. It's this very clear family systems going on here. And Abraham, his whole journey before anybody else was born, it was one struggle after the other, yet through it all, always walking with God, walking through that struggle, trusting in the Lord. Sometimes questioning, sometimes doubting, sometimes trying to make his own way, but always back there he knows that what matters is what the Lord wants. Walking with God like that is passed down through the generations just like anything else, just like any bad behavior. Walking with God, the good stuff, is passed down generations also. In each story that we find these ancient texts, in each one we find complicated people living complicated lives, with God moving in and out and through their relationships to find ways to give the gifts of blessing in life. Nothing comes easy, but with each experience comes greater perspective. Another way we could describe that greater perspective is as Jesus did in the gospel passage about deep soil. That's how Jesus talks about in that parable of the sower. As complicated as our lives are, God does not give up on us. No way. God is walking around all up in our midst. God is dropping kingdom seeds all over the place. Some of us are just the path. We have nowhere for them seeds to go, and those evil birds come and snatch away those kingdom seeds away from us. Some of us are rocky ground. We hear the word with joy, but the soil isn't deep enough, so things get rough, and we let go of the word because it wasn't able to take root. Sometimes things get so tough, the struggle gets so real, we find ourselves asking, if so, why do I even exist? Some of us are thorns. Some of us hear the word, but we love the cares of the world and the lure of wealth a little too much, and those thorns choke off the word when it tries to grow. And then some of us are the deep soil, and hopefully all of us are growing into becoming the deep soil. I still hope that I'm growing to become this deep soil. But as we grow to become that, it's good for us to remember that struggle is one of the most, if not the most, powerful ways to help us raise our eyes above our low place here on earth and see from a greater perspective. Those of us who've struggled, especially more than others, more than I could even understand, can relate more to people who struggle. It was funny talking to my brother the other day about our brothers and sisters in Pakistan that we mentioned, the Christians over there and the fighting slavery, and how I was so blessed to visit with them through the Facebook call and things like that. And when he heard about it, he was like, holy moly. Or it was something like that. I don't remember his exact words. But it was like, and I thought I had it rough. You know, I don't know, but to have been at the brink of death at the hands of a very painful illness, with a very, very painful treatment to get better, then to learn about someone else's suffering and be like, yeah, what I got going on is nothing. I don't know, but I think there's something very divine, something very holy in that. The whole thing with Jacob and Esau today, it's really about being first, isn't it? They were wrestling, struggling the whole time in Rebekah's womb. They were born. Jacob still had a hold of Esau's heel. They grew up. Jacob still hadn't ever let go of Esau's heel, and he duped Esau into selling him his birthright, just waiting for that right opportunity. That first place trophy of the birthright. The bigger prize is Isaac's blessing later that Jacob manages to get his hands on too. But the story serves, this story serves as a backdrop for the people of Israel. This is a foundational place for us to understand Israel as a people, because they come from Jacob, whose name becomes Israel before too long. And this is about the people of Israel throughout the ages and today. As Jacob becomes Israel, Jacob is always fighting for that top spot. He's always fighting for that first place. He's always fighting for his place with the Lord up there. You know, that's how Israel got there, where they are in the nation now. Always fighting for that top spot. And that's also how they stayed there for so long. And that's also why they got kicked out of there. It's because of always fighting for that top spot. And then that's how they ended up there again. It's just this persistence in going for that first place, that top spot with the Lord. Never giving up. That's in their identity. You know, it's the idea that you get what you have coming to you from the Lord by struggling for it. It's not that you can make it happen yourself, but you're not going to get there without the struggle. The struggle is inherently a part of the Lord's will. Now, there's a few things to keep in mind before getting too carried away with that idea. For Jacob, along with all of his shadiness, his conniving trickery, his dirty plays, he did get the birthright. Later on, he does get the blessing. But what goes around does come around also. He becomes a great nation, but his life is full of the kinds of complications that are very reminiscent of what he did to his brother. Beyond that, Jesus had a little something to say about it too. about what it means to be first. This could shed some light on why Jacob's bad behavior toward his brother came back to haunt him. Jesus taught us that the first will be last, and the last will be first. To make ourselves last, we've got to see the world from a very humble position. Now, what I've gone through is nothing on what you must be going through right now. Now, I've come to figure out that sometimes that sometimes means understanding that you don't understand something. Grappling with the fact that I can't really understand what somebody else is going through, even if it's been something similar. I think that's a good place to start. You know, as many pictures as I see or videos I watch, I can't understand really what it's like to be a slave. But Jesus calls us to be slaves to slaves. In God's eyes, from a greater perspective, dropping kingdom seeds, watching over the deepest, richest soil. That's what first place looks like.